What is going on, everybody? How's your week been? Hopefully, well. Hopefully, your weekend has been well also. So far, not exactly halfway through, just a little bit over, right? Still have the rest of today to go. Welcome to GPT with me. I am Nico Lafakis, mainly go by Nico. Um, I know that you guys are used to seeing me with Christine Romero, and it's not that she's not with the show anymore. She's still helping me out. She's kind of on the back end, helping me out with doing the graphics, with doing the reel cuts and all that kind of stuff. But she recently got a job with Red Pandas, and she's doing really well with them. She just put out a clip this past week that she did a AI onboarding with them and adopted her official Aussie accent in order to do so, and it was really cool. So if you haven't seen that, definitely go to her page and check that out. But yeah, so she is definitely still going to be a part of GPT with me. We still do research week in and week out and talk to each other about AI constantly, and share tools and tips and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of what comes to this show is still very much a mutual effort. And I don't know, we'll see. Like eventually, hopefully, things can switch around in terms of the schedules, and maybe we do the show at a different time or whatever in the future, and make it so that we can both be back on at the same time. But for now, getting into news, I suppose. Let me see if I can. I should be able to. You would think that, I do spend an inordinate amount of time throughout the week doing this stuff, but you would think that it would be like way, way more prepared, I suppose. I don't know. I'm trying those. So AI news this week. Wanted to start here. Princeton University puts out a report saying that a lot of what's going on with AI now is it's turning into hype, and there's a lot of snake oil salesmen with AI going on out there, and money is being burned where it ought not to be. That it's going to be like another .com aspect. First and foremost, I think because we've been through that, this the time period between then and now was fairly short, has been fairly short. So I don't think that there's that effect that it's necessarily as possible. I think people are way more adept at understanding, at being able to understand like what is this technology. I think that that time period of fast action has kind of come and gone. I do see it when it comes to a lot of AI companies like having their IPOs, right? The first week or two, their numbers usually just spike tremendously, and then about a month later, it basically drops to what would be expected of that technology in that space. And that just shows me that people are still day traders, I guess. I don't know exactly who, but people are still trying to hype it up, but it's not gaining any traction. So what you're seeing out there in terms of these companies that are getting funded and getting pushed forward with what they've put out there and what they're building, it's not snake oil. I don't think. There are unfortunately a lot of companies that are building very similar tools who, I don't know, maybe they just haven't looked out into the horizon of what's out there already, so they don't quite know what's available and aren't understanding how many other players there are in their space. And so they think what it is that they're creating is a lot more special than maybe it is. I'm not entirely sure. Uh, I like to think that especially nowadays, business people are smarter than that, especially now that we have AI to help us along. Should be a lot smarter than that. I would hope that more people are taking advantage of this technology in that way, in terms of it being an assistant as opposed to a us versus them. But that sort of leads me into the next unfortunate aspect, which is the uh, ruling against AI art content. Now, this one is it gets a little conflated because initially my reaction was the same, and then I kind of had to step back, read the story a little bit more in depth, and sort of backed off of my initial reaction, which was that it was an attack on AI art in general, and it's not. It's a direct attack on, and it as we'll see how it's going to play out, but it is a direct attack on AGI art. And so, like, let that settle in for a second, because that's exactly what this discussion is about. That's exactly what this copyright issue is about. This copyright issue that got slammed down is about artificial general intelligence created art. You can call it like AI art if you want to. The person who came up with the system that designed this, um, let's see if his name. I already have so quickly remembered his name. Every time it comes to trying to remember people's names, don't rely on me because I'm not going to be able to help you. Fowler is his last name. Stephen Fowler. Okay. Um, so Stephen Fowler came up with, and there's actually another article related to him and his AGI creation. I would say, I think he admits as well. He admits that it's sentient. I would argue that it also is. Um, and if you take a look at what it's done, basically his machine that he's built has come up had created its own art, created its own image, not prompted by him, designed, did it however it wanted to, created it however it wanted to. Is there any sort of understanding behind this? I don't know. Like, it is what it is. I don't know that it's any different from, if I'm being honest, I don't know that it's any different from another abstract artist that might be using some strange, method of putting together an artistic work. It does have a sort of theme to it in terms of, some type of traveling through a tunnel or train tracks or whatever this might be. It's got a setting to it, it's got a background to it. There's some lighting that's being taken into consideration with some shadow. It's an artistic piece. It was done by a machine, unprompted by a human, right? Lacks any human involvement. So we've already struck down this rule, which I think I posted about this earlier today. I think it's really interesting that we've already struck down this rule that's like, well, if it's not done by a human, then it doesn't count. And we've done this at a time when we're already so very close to, and Thaler, I think, is right there on the verge of having created something that can think on its own and think for itself and do for itself. So we're not there just yet. Let's fine. I'll back off it. We're not there just yet. 5 years from now, we will be. 5 years from now, this is going to be a reality where we're going to see systems. We're going to not just systems. We're going to see like moving machines. We're going to see automatons. We're going to see robots with these complex brain systems in them. And that's when the question of, is this really art, is going to have to get taken into reconsideration. That complex system being able to come up with its own designs, its own artistic creations, its own inventions, its own theories, mathematics, whatever you might be able to think of, whatever it might be able to think of. Okay, to that point, because it's maybe taking it a step too far. So looking into Thaler a little bit more, it was like, okay, well, where has this gone? It's gone to the point where he's come up with his own model called Davos. I don't know if I'm if I'm pronouncing that properly, probably not. So I apologize if I'm not. Um, but Davos is a what I would consider, I guess, I'm not sure that he would consider it the same. Not entirely sure. I consider it to be a form of super intelligent AI. And I think he's definitely the first one to have sort of cracked that code and to have put it together. Not necessarily crack the code, but the first person to have taken the step far enough to say, okay, well, I will let this thing think on its own to a degree. Even if it's not to a massive degree, it's still to some degree. And it's pretty, when I say massive, like terminology, it's very odd now, especially how we deal with time and how other people perceive time. It's, I say massive. What I mean by that is game changing, like everybody on the face of the earth sees it. To at this point, it's not that massive of a ripple, but it's definitely going to get there. So, in this particular instance with Davos and what you're seeing on the screen, if you're reading, is that the model that he came up with, he gave it a bit of general intelligence, enough that again it could come up with its own art, right? It could come up with, at the same time, he worked with it in order to come up with a new invention, something that didn't exist at all. Now, you've worked with GPT, you've worked with a lot of these models. No, none of these models can do this. None of these models can think for themselves. If you ask them to try to come up with something new, they really can't. They can they can come up with something new, possibly. They can, give you like ideas, steer you in a direction, but they can't just of their own volition come up with a new, better design, let's say. In other words, you can't give it what I'm trying to get at is you can't give it the specs for a particular design and say create a better version of this. It's not going to understand how to do that. It's going to have a very limited understanding of how to do that. Again, it doesn't have the general intelligence to be able to go outside of its own limitations to think per se about being able to do that. So in order for Dallas's Davos to have come up with a brand new invention, right? And what it is it was a container, and he calls it the fractal container. New, inventive, and useful, right? Which is the only considerations that are needed for for the patent office in the UK. So he got it patented in the UK. It's also looking to get it patented in the US. Of course, the US slammed it down immediately, said no, because there's no human intervention. So here's the funny part. People are going to argue and say, well, what he did isn't general intelligence. But at the same time, you have the US Supreme Court, or just the US Patent Office saying, well, we're not going to give you a patent because there was no human intervention. Can't have it both ways, guys. You got to have it one way or the other. Either there was some human intervention, which means it's not artificial general intelligence, or there absolutely was no human intervention, which means it's artificial general intelligence. It means that it came up with it on its own. So that's why I fall on the field of it is artificial general intelligence. It did come up with this patent. Dallas does not deny it. He does not say, yes, I gave it specifications and it and told it to do this and told it to do that, and this is how it happened. No, fully admits that it came up with it on its own. So it just brings into a really interesting question now. Like I said, here, US courts have already shot it down and said, no, we're not going to do it because it doesn't have human intervention, or it doesn't have a human hand involved. And yet we're already at the doorstep of an AI that decided, an AGI that came up with an invention on its own, and it's already being denied, even though it came up with it. It's no different than any one of us coming up with something, and all of a sudden it just gets denied because of whatever reason that the system decides to come up with, right? So And how do you explain that? That's going to be the difficulty. How do you explain to the machine that it's not allowed, right? If it came up with it in the same methods, using the same methodology in the same manner in which a human would, and qualified in the same way that a human would, with the only exception being that it was a machine as opposed to it being an organic human, right? We're gonna have like we're really gonna have to start asking some of these questions in the next like decade or so. Okay, so on from that, again, I just wanted to point out, I think it's really, I think it's really silly. It's Princeton. I get it. I'm not even remotely claiming to be that well educated. Let's take it easy on that. All I'm saying is when you're going to sit there and say that a lot of this is hype and that it might still be hype and snake oil and all that kind of stuff, and you're talking about companies that might be, taking other people's money, just remember, and I also want to point out that one guy came up with this. I know, like, hopefully, if you've been like following my posts for a while, you'll know that I've been talking about the fact that these major developments are going to be coming from really small places. They're not going to be coming from massive companies. Yeah, okay, I'm not, the model itself and the model being released in GPT and that kind of like that is major. That is a major, massive development, right? But here we're talking about AGI, like legitimate artificial general intelligence, and it came from one guy, all the way in this, not in America, right? Which is almost like another reason for the patent office to say no way, because we because we didn't do it, you did it first. Who knows? But yeah, I just think that it's too soon. It's way too soon to sit there and say like, oh no, that the the magic is over with regards to AI, and there's nothing yet to be. We've only seen the beginning. We've only just begun, and we haven't even started to work hand in hand with it as much as we ought to be. So, moving on from that, I know you guys have heard about the wildfires in Hawaii, and so again, another way in which AI is not being a hype machine, and that it is actually being used for positive positive forces, especially outside of the medical field. Like medical is just it's taking off. Like it is just taking off completely. It's just going nuts. When it comes to wildfires, I never would have thought of this. And it's strange only because I think about the weird things that happen, like Facebook getting in trouble with, I'm not sure how many other states. I just remember that they got in trouble with the state of Illinois for olfactory sensor, uh, I can't remember, infringement of some type. Basically, they were gathering olfactory data from users without their knowing. I'm not even sure through. I wish I could tell you through what devices. I do not remember. I just remember that it was a lawsuit that took place. Thinking back on it now and looking at this technology, I almost want to say, well, it might have been worth the price in order to learn how to develop a type of technology that can actually smell and become a sensor, like a smelling sensor, right? So here you have this technology now that's able to smell smoke within a forest and alert people well ahead of time, alert fire services well ahead of time, before it becomes out of control. Let's say. I'm not sure. I can't tell you what the level of accuracy is in terms of signal strength and all that kind of stuff, and what they're claiming that it increases the detectability, I believe, by 60, 68 or something percent, as opposed to what's going on now in terms of systems that they have in place now, which are heat monitor based. And I think between the two, you pretty much have it. I don't want to say covered, but it's better than what's going on now. And I don't know. Again, I like the fact that AI is finding its way into additional avenues of our lives that are meant to protect us and meant to help us. Surprisingly and thankfully, the where I would have thought that there would be a lot of harm being done, and I'm not saying that there isn't. I just don't like to harp on it. that there's, when the harm when it comes to AI. At I like the fact that major companies are sort of taking the hackers' attention away from trying to do something independently, and they're using them to like not to the company's advantage, but to the technology's advantage by asking hackers to try to break into these systems or to try to outsmart the AI in some cases. So there's sort of these challenges going on that, in a sense, are helping how these systems are going to be working for us in the future, and on top of the fact of increasing the level of security that we can get out of it. So last, but certainly not least, I just wanted to point out earlier in the year there was a lawsuit that started with Midjourney, and again the lawsuit from what we talked about in terms of Davos and Thalos's creation of AI art and how that got slapped down, very different from what would be going on with somebody that, say, created something with Midjourney. And I'm not entirely sure how many of you have seen what that process even looks like. I would like to spend some time. I don't know if it's going to be next weekend, might be the weekend after, but I want to get some Midjourney artists on here as well, and just some AI artists in general, because it's not just Midjourney. There's so many other platforms that people use, and they're just not getting enough attention. That are, I don't want to say, again, it's not a thing of just as good. It's not a thing of who's better than who. All this other stuff. Every company is sort of good at whatever it is that it's focused on. And that's where they kind of need to just stay, because that's how this sort of space is. You don't really see OpenAI focusing a ton of effort on generative art, because that's not its niche. They they don't need to spend time on that, because either it will automatically get there by way of other means that they're developing themselves, or somebody else will develop the engine and there'll be some sort of cross path, however it's going to happen. I say that only to say that Midjourney is always going to be the open AI of the generative art space. That's just the way that it is. It has the greatest level of detail, it has the greatest amount of training, it has the greatest support base. I don't even know what their plans are entirely. I think they just want to stay themselves, which I think is perfect. I think they want to stay private, which is awesome. I urge a lot of these companies to not bite that apple and to stay on a private scale as much as you can, or for as long as you can, basically, so that you're not constantly pressured by shareholders. At any rate, I think that Midjourney is definitely going to be one of those companies that sets the bar for what generative art is supposed to be able to do, and the capabilities not only of the generated work itself, but also the capability of the engine that's driving it. So there are other engines like Leonardo, which allow you to do some amazing things, and especially the fact that you can train your own model with Leonardo. You can take your own art and sort of create your own artistic style engine with it. So yes, that sounds exactly like what you think it is. If you are an artist and you have your own current style, you can actually import your style into Leonardo and use that to generate art in your style, right? So, does that mean like never draw your own stuff again? No, but if you're having a hard time conceptualizing something, or you're trying to commercialize your stuff and you've come up with characters, let's say you're a character designer and you want to do some commercialization type stuff, you can do character design all day long now, right? And you can do all these. Thumbnail design is one of those things that I keep thinking of when it comes to generative art, that you no longer have to waste hours and hours and hours coming up with different thumbnails. Now you can just pump them out, no problem. So just food for thought when it comes to that. I think when you guys see the episodes with the generative artists, and if you see how much time goes into some of these creations, you'll get a better understanding for real generative AI art versus the type of stuff that people just, oh, I just typed in, a fruit on a tree, like in the far background or something. Like, yeah, okay, that's that. You're going to get an image, and it's going to look okay, and it's going to look like what you want it to look like, more than likely, or at least close to it, right? But it may not be as photorealistic. It may not be as cinematic. It may not be quite as beautiful as it could be, might not be as stylized as it could be. There are so many different things that you can do with these art programs, so many different directions that you can go in. And I guarantee you, if you ever use any of these programs, you are never going to stop. You turn into, I don't want to say that you turn into an artist, but you gain an artist mentality very quickly, in that the majority of these programs work in terms of they generate, I'll just go into it, who cares? I do have, I'm going to show you guys some stuff about like journalist style writing, and how to sort of build that up. But I just want to quickly just jump in here and show you guys this, since I can, just as an example per se. So like this was me coming up with the background design for the template, or for the thumbnail for this episode, right? So I wanted to use like a writer's desk, and I should, like, you won't see it. There are, I don't even know how many versions. This isn't, yeah. So this is actually a pretty good comparison, because it's like how many different versions of desks that I went through, different styles that I wanted to go with. I wanted it to have a bit of an anime Studio Ghibli look to it. So this isn't even the normal engine. This is actually the Niji engine, the newest one, which is specifically used for doing anime and doing not necessarily, well, I guess anime, but for doing any sort of 2D art, it's the better engine to use. So this is the image that I actually ended up going with, and just trimming it out a little bit. And I went with it mainly because of the haze in there. So it's never just the one thing. When you generate an image, you're always going to get this four plate, or four up plate, and you're going to be able to pick between these designs. And that's why I say you get an artist mentality very quickly, because even when you do something like this, now zoom out won't work very well because of the fact that it's sort of, oh yeah, the new Varia region aspect. If you guys haven't seen this, or if you haven't used Midjourney, it's super, super, super cool stuff. So let's see, I want to do this and like up just like the screen size here, right? And then I want to say, let's see, for the top. Oh, I hit enter too fast, I think. Anyway, Varia region is a new tool that you can use in order to change just a particular part of an image. So you can actually change the prompt, and then change that aspect of the image in and of itself. So if you wanted to put, like, I don't know, an animation or something, not an animation, but like if you wanted to put an image of like a character running across the screen, or whatever you wanted to do here, similar to how you would replace an image on a green screen, you could do the same thing here, or you could just replace the external aspects of it. It's a very cool feature. I haven't spent enough time playing with it since it just dropped like 3 days ago or something like that. Like this stuff, it happens so quickly. It's nuts. But I've got a couple minutes. I'll just give you a quick tour. So here we're going to say like imagine, which is how Midjourney works. This is what Midjourney's engine looks like, by the way. For right now, it's all in Discord. Pretty soon, they just did a talk not too long ago. So pretty soon they're actually going to have a web interface, and they're also very steadily working on version 6, which I think is going to just go hand in hand. So it's going to have like a web interface and be the new version of Midjourney as well. So just starting with just a regular prompt. This is now like this is, if you see what's going on here, like it's a little bit different than what you do in GPT and Claude and these other programs. And that's why I want you guys to understand the difference when it comes to people talking about like prompting and prompt engineering and that kind of thing. I'm telling you right now, when it comes to prompt engineering with large language models, what you're really referring to is storytelling. How well can you tell the story and how accurately can you tell it? Okay. How much detail and how accurate? When it comes to this is actual prompt engineering. Here's the difference. Okay. So, like I said before, an apple on a table in a kitchen during the day. Okay. So, I just want to, and I might actually just do the whole thing on this. That kind of sucks, but um, I'll do this really quick example first. And I don't even have to wait for that to render. I can just say apple on a table in a kitchen full of is covered with photograph. Let's see. And I don't really have to change too much outside of that. Oh, okay. This was also in Niji. So let me see. I can't really do photograph, but I can do golden hour of the afternoon. I can say mixed media, watercolor, and ink drop. And other than that, we'll say style of 120. Okay, so here is just your regular, again, using the Niji model. So this is a 2D model, an apple on a table in a kitchen during the day. That's it, straight up sentence. So of the four, this is like the closest, this is the coolest, I guess. And it is the most like perfect apple like. This is pretty close as well, right? Because it has the one stem with the leaves coming off, whereas this one, again, that very, very typical apple picture with the two leaves coming off the top of it, which actually, when I think about it, is more like an orange. But you get the picture. Okay. And so now here's the difference, right? Like here's an apple on the table. Now again, it looks different in terms of like the composition and in terms of like looks kind of dirty or whatever. That has to do with the style that we added in there with regards to mixed media, watercolor, and ink drop. But you could see the difference in this volumetric lighting that's coming through and the nice dark shadows, and there's some reflections going on. There's some volumetric lighting in the background that's coming through. It's a completely different image than just this very static, like nothing happening, very simple image to, all of a sudden there's just a lot of dynamic going on to this. So anyway, and again, this isn't what it's close to what I want. So it's not really what I want. So there goes 45 minutes of my day going through this prompt, tearing it apart, putting it back together to figure out what are the aspects that work, what are the aspects that I don't like that don't work, and how am I going to shift this and make it into what I ultimately want to see. So it's definitely not about like, hey, just input something, get something back, and you're done with it. Okay, on to today's purpose, which is to do some writing. So I kind of primed this already yesterday, and by using two plugins, Memory Bank, which is my all-time favorite, and then a new one. I haven't seen Link Reader. I don't know what happened to it. I had been using Scraper, but not that Scraper's bad. I just think that the plugin itself, maybe there might be some detection software out there or something that is blocking it. Seems like it's not working quite as well as it used to. So I've started using Access Link, and it's relatively the same thing, except for the fact that it reads way faster. So when it comes to doing what I love to do, which is to pull resources together to build other trainers, Access Link, definitely the way to go. So this is why I talk about prompt engineering being an odd thing when it comes to large language models, because I see other people come up with their prompts and they're really, really good. I'm not saying that they're not. I don't know if they come up with them on their own and they just sit there and they write them for hours and hours, because the type of prompts that I see that are really good look like somebody spent hours and hours putting them together. It does not look like somebody just kind of whipped it up and you know had these when it, because when you say prompt engineering, what I think of is at least some type of programming, which means that at least there's some repetitive terms, repetitive phrases, keywords that get used with any prompt, that those keywords have the same effect. And that's not the case. That it really isn't. There are very, very few keywords that you could use between prompts or between conversations that will give you the exact same effect. And I'm not sure why people would want the exact same effect anyway. 9.9 out of 10 of you must must be trying to get your result and what you want. So I don't know about any of that stuff. All of that just to say, you're going to get a very inside look at how I put these things together. So, starting out with salutation, let's get to work, asking it on essentially what are some top 5 web resources when it comes to being a great writer. So, it gave me a really nice bevy of resources to go by. I looked through them. Purdue OWL, all right, not the worst. Writer's Digest, meh. Grammarly blog, terrible. Uh, terrible in the sense that, look, I'm looking for resources to pull into GPT for GPT to read and retain, and then to create something further from that. I'm not looking for resources for myself to be able to pick up on. So, like, if it was for me, yes, Grammarly would be awesome, Writer's Digest, awesome, Purdue OWL, awesome. And GPT already has my custom instructions. So let's go over that really quick. It's tailored to me. So this isn't set up for what we're doing today, but I'm going to pull all this out and set it up. But this is what's tailored just for me. So this is just for my writing, which is why you'll see it reply back that, given your penchant for informed critical analysis, or my take, the diversity of context, could help you explore, right? So it's taking me into consideration. Why is it taking me into consideration? Because part of my custom instructions is I like to work in a GAN methodology. I've talked about this over and over in this past week. Can't stress how important it is, because of the fact that using this method allows you to work with GPT as your assistant, allows you to work with GPT in the way that you really want to, where it is asking for your clarification, it's asking for your edification, it's asking for your ability to train it on the responses that it's giving to you, right? As opposed to it just giving you the like, this is that third level. So you're used to the giving you the answer, and you're used to the giving you the answer and then giving you some context, right? Because three and 3.5 gave you the answer and like a little bit of context behind it. 4 gives you the whole story behind it, and GAN will allow you to get the whole story behind it, tailored to you, and to then ask you additional questions at the end, not only just related to what you're going into, right? But it realizes that I'm wanting to look at a number of resources. So it's also now asking me, do you want me to go deeper into these resources, or is this, high levels is where you want it to stay? It's not just letting go and saying, okay, we're done with this conversation, on to the next thing. I have to actually tell it that. So at any rate, so it gives me these resources, so that I pull from those resources all of the URLs that I wanted to look at. This is really easy to do if you have a Google Drive account. Basically, just open a spreadsheet. Whenever you go to a website, you're going to select the links on the site, and then you're just going to go into Drive and you're going to paste them into a column. That's going to give you the web links, and then you're just going to copy and paste the links to a separate cell. Then you have the actual, because when you initially paste them in there, it's just going to be the words. It's going to be the link, basically, with the URL embedded in the link. So then you will copy paste and paste the URL into the cells, and then copy those URLs, come back into GPT, and you're basically asking it with the plugins enabled, hey, take the information from these URLs and store it into memory bank. And the reason we're using memory bank is so that, and just so you can see what this looks like, by the way, um, we're using memory bank because it's a better way. Like even right now, if I needed to ask GPT to start working on something within this conversation, it's a better way of it storing everything that we're working on. I don't have to worry about it ever forgetting. I can just say, based on the things you have remembered, and it will automatically go into memory bank and go through our conversation and figure it out and pull it together. So what I've done is I've said, go through all of these and store them. So it's going, I did this yesterday so you guys wouldn't have to suffer through it. It doesn't take a long time, but it takes time. It would take, I wouldn't want you guys to have to sit here for 10 minutes while it's going through it. And so you can see that it does as much as it possibly can, and then it stops, and then I just have to prompt it to continue until it finishes. I couldn't get that last one. I tried to tell it, I tried to see if it could sort of force it, couldn't do it, but then continues to ask if I want to do something else. No. So I say, no worries, it's okay, let's move on. So based on everything you've learned, okay, I'm trying to create a persona to work with a generative model, and I want to be able to describe to the generative model how it's supposed to be working on in terms of creating storytelling. So can you create a sort of description on how we're supposed to do that? So it comes up with it, except for the last part of it was to utilize digital media to enhance storytelling, which is perfect, right? That's especially for marketing. That's a perfect aspect of it. Or even when it comes to writing books, children's stories, obviously you want to use some sort of media. Can't do that. The generative model can't do that. So we have to take that one out. So we replace that with tension and conflict, right? Again, it's asking, it's telling me why this is a good way to replace it. And then it's asking me, would I like to, would this adjustment suit better to the persona for storytelling? Yes, of course. Now I need you to take that and arrange it in a paragraph form, because what's the purpose of this? To feed it into my custom instructions. If you thought that this was just going to be a persona that I'm going to, hey, this, GPT, I want you to take on the persona of blah, blah, blah. No, like the whole purpose of this is to create an entirely new writer. Okay. So it creates a paragraph form, which is not too bad, right? It's exactly what I was looking for. But I know that I have a character limit of 1,500, right? So, and this is what I'm doing this for the custom instruction. How would you like GPT, or what would you like GPT to know about you to provide better responses? Now that's just for it to provide responses to me. Okay. How would you like GPT to respond, right? Is the output that I want to get from GPT. So this is how I want you to interact, and I want you to understand how I like to typically do things. And this is, here's how I would like you to talk to me. Here's how I would like you to respond, like when I'm talking to you, and here's the sort of your limitations if you want to look at it that way. I don't look at it that way, but I try to like take off and remove as many limitations as possible. But yeah, you could use this for constraints. You could use it to have it like center onto topics, however you want to use that. So it did the first round of that. Okay, so put that into 1,500 characters. So now we have the 1,500 character storyteller model. And so let's see. Yeah, so it wanted to. So when it did this, it was using some metaphor in there, right? So throwing a dash of surprise, a plot twist, an unexpected character. So it's these are the spices in your storytelling stew that keep your reader. That's the type of stuff. I don't want that kind of thing getting into the custom instructions, because it's going to come out in it gets amplified. What Christine and I have noticed about custom instructions is that what you put in gets amplified pretty massively. So especially if you tell it to start using some cheery feedback or something like that, to be overtly happy, you'll start seeing emoticons pop up all over the place. So it came up with a better description of that, which was more Spock-like, is what I like to shoot for, which I haven't actually tried that, but my God, I don't know why I didn't think of that before, but I kind of want to try that now. So basically what I did was I came up with this persona and I wanted it to remember this as being the storyteller, right? So now I can manage this in other stored information here, right? So now we go to the memory bank web. I don't want to go into the login for this, but should be through my Google account. Nobody has to see any passwords. Oh, wow. Okay. Odd. I don't know why it would even take me to somewhere that has nothing stored. Oh. Anyway, create the billing. So it has this stored, right, as the storyteller. Okay. This information here, that's what it considers to be the storyteller. So anytime I say, give me the 1500 character description for the storyteller, it'll do that. I can also say, please write this in the style of the storyteller. And now it has that style stored, right? So we don't have to go creating separate instances for separate writers. We can just create them all in one. So the next one that I was doing before I started here was to basically have it come up with information related to marketing. And so for it to be a marketing storyteller, right? In order to create a new persona that's used specifically for marketing content writing, do you think you can do that with the information you've memorized? It says yes, of course, and it comes with all of these, right? And so we're going to do the same thing where we say, that's great. Please create a 1500 character description. Character length description of this so that we can use it as a persona, generative AI model, much like the storyteller. We will call this one marketer. Okay, so hopefully it'll do the exact same thing. It'll come up with that nice 1500 character description of it without using the metaphor, hopefully. Let's see, finding a unique angle. Yep, that'll be your writing. Time relevance is another key factor. So it's, the whole purpose is to, okay, take all of these and put them into a context, right? As opposed to using I don't know how other people use prompts. I know I've seen some examples, and so other people might take this and say, like, oh, well, just use this as a list along with what it is that you're doing. Yeah, you could do that, or you could actually give it a contextual story, fit it into a format that it's going to understand why it's doing what it is that it's doing. So, because you want it to be a marketing content writer, right? So this is telling it a story of what, not just what it's doing, but why it's doing it. So to excel in content marketing, start by embracing customer-centric storytelling. Your narrative should place the customer at the forefront, illustrating how their life could improve by using the product or service, but don't just focus on the features, focus on the benefits. It's telling the model what it's supposed to be doing as a content marketer, right? So would you like to store this as the marketer? Yes, please store that. Okay, so what are we going to do with this? We've got 10 minutes, supposedly. And how am I going to churn out content that you're going to say is like pro content overnight? What are we going to do? How am I going to proof this? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up with some types of content based on just ideas at random. And then I'm going to post them on LinkedIn, and I'm going to have you guys determine not necessarily whether it was human written content or not, but just to give it a grade. I'm going to post these pieces of content and I'm going to post them as a poll and just say, give this content a grade, A, B, C, or D, right? And we'll see where it lies. I'll let you guys be the judge, and hopefully it's not going to be biased. Hopefully you guys will take things into consideration and give it a fair score. Give it a fair shot. We'll see. Again, there's no cheating or anything going on here. And I know the question is going to come into like, well, what about Claude? Don't worry, you'll see about Claude. How do the two work in conjunction? You'll see. Don't worry about it. Okay, so is there anything that we'd like to work on? No, I think we're good with that. So using the abilities of marketer, I'd like you to write a LinkedIn post about, let's see, about cancer prevention methods. And let's see. Let's be a little bit more specific, obviously. Post about best. Let's go with heart attack prevention methods. Things people should do. Before, or let's, yeah, things people should do to avoid same warning signs. Okay, so we'll go with that. Let it go hog wild. Now, again, it's using the marketer, right, as the persona that's going to be writing this, okay? So when you see what it's doing in terms of it using, like, understand, I would never post this. Why? Because it's not my style. It's not the way that I write. But it's taking into account how are posts, like how are posts professionally written on LinkedIn, right? Now, this might be the case. This might not be. How do I change that really quick? I could easily say latest post strategies for links in content. Okay. And in order to be actually the latest, we'll go to the past month. If you guys didn't know about Google search tools, you should. Tools, timetable. Unfortunately, you cannot combine timetable with type of results, but if you're not seeing the results that you want, I would absolutely use verbatim. So boosting posts on LinkedIn, some marketing solutions and strategies, right? So let's see. New product launches or events, customer spotlight. Yeah, it's not exactly what we were looking for. Run more effective ad campaigns, content discovery, 6 LinkedIn posting tips you must master for success. Okay, so there's some posting tips. Don't care about that. Optimize your profile. Know your content topics and interests. Okay. Is that where the 6 finally in there at the bottom? Write like you talk, obviously. Respond to every comment. This is more about like, it's not really posting tips so much as, how to build your personal brand. Effective LinkedIn marketing strategy. Okay, so I'm not really finding what I want verbatim. So let's see. Content discovery tool. Next one. Strategies. Let's see. I doubt that it's still even going to be much. Staying ahead of the game. Let's see. Smart content. Yeah, so this is, again, it's more strategy than it is written. So anyway, I don't like the post because it's not the way that I would write it. Okay, this is the way that this marketing person would write it based on the sort of marketing profile that we've built for it. Okay, so let's say rewrite those in words of the storyteller. So what I'm looking for specifically is to see if, see, in the words of, should have said in the style of. So it definitely has added additional context, right? And it's gone from being really a look, this is engaging, right? And everyone, it asks you a question right away. Uh, starts giving you points that you can go along with pretty quickly, and then decide on if you want to read the detail. Whereas here, you're getting a story like all the way through, right? Imagine your heart is the protagonist of its own epic tale. It beats tirelessly, facing countless challenges. But what if it could arm? But what if you could arm it with the right tools to conquer its foes and live to tell the tale? Right. So then it goes on. It essentially tells a story uh, with the way that things are gone, or with the way that the information is flowing. But the only thing is it's going a little bit overt, right? And so earlier I was talking about how we would use these as primers for a new instance. This version is great. Okay. So what I want to do is take this as that primer. And I want to go to a new chat. I'm going to go to custom instructions. I'm going to say, and that's pretty much it. Everything else will fit into play. Yep. Cool. Okay, so now we have that. Let's go ahead and refresh. Okay, so what I want to do, let's see, what's a good way to do this? Yeah, content strategy. I wonder. That's literally the first time I've clicked one of those. Just kind of want to see what it'll do, how different it's going to be, especially with what I just gave it. Hmm. In case you guys were wondering how powerful one little ask was. Now you can see where a lot of the storytelling element is. I shouldn't have gone off on that tangent. I want to, let's create the forward. No, what is that? Let's create the trailer for a novel. For once, I didn't actually. It's been a minute. I went too fast and I did not actually give it salutation when I started. I feel bad now. Which is interesting because it did not answer in the way that I say, like, sort of like that's the way it should be answering every time. So it's interesting that it decided to bypass that. Oh, yeah. You guys are able to see what I left that open a little bit. You guys are able to see what I normally work on. It's a Visual Studio, or no, this is a sort of story visualization bot. I recently did a Jasper test not too long ago. Demo writing. Anyway. Okay, so we're looking to write a trailer for a novel. It's all the things that we're supposed to. Let's see. It's very much the same like elements, right? Script writing, storyboarding. See, so it's thinking that like we're doing like an entire like video trailer or something like that for a book. That's not what we're doing. We are writing, let's say, oops, that's where I'm at. Yeah. Sorry, I meant to write the There we go. Yep. And it understands because again, my input custom instruction, or I should say my output instructions are that I prefer to have like more granular explanations to what it is that I'm doing. So in terms of the how-to aspect of this, right? Um, like how to get a pro writing version of GPT. The number one way in which I do that is to use plugins. Again, to use memory bank with some type of page content fetcher. All pages seems to be the bee's knees right now. And then you just feed it a very simple read and store the information from the URLs. Okay. And it'll do just that. And now you've got a primed GPT that understands storytelling, it understands, um, again, marketing content strategy, and you can sort of put that under its own sort of character. You could create these characters and store them within memory bank so that you always have these versions. How does storytelling resonate with you? Would you like me to make any adjustments? No, but I would like you to come up with to increase. Let's see, to increase. Yeah, see, unfortunately, it's like it's difficult to do these things because of the fact that we haven't given it a whole business background yet. I know I'm running over on time, but I shouldn't have spent so much time with the news earlier. There's a lot of stuff going on, and I definitely shouldn't have ran off on the Midjourney tangent, but I do apologize for that. I just want to see. Let me see where this ended up. Okay, quaint town of town name. So you can see. Okay, so remember when I said don't bother writing your own prompts because you can use GPT to do that? Doesn't what does this look like to you? Oh wow, it looks like a prompt, doesn't it? Yes, that's because that's what these models do. They can write their own stuff. Like it's not again. So like when you tell it to write you a template, when you're thinking of like prompts, right? Like let's see. Can you create a prompt template that would describe writing style and uh, that would describe the storyteller to another generative AI engine. Qualities such as conflict. There you go. There you go. So anytime that you want to create a prompt based off of something you're doing, based off of whatever it is, it's very easy. It's very easy to just tell that, like to tell it to do that. I'd like to create a prompt template for writing long articles that are SEO friendly and can apply to a number of different industries and uh, category types. See what that looks like, even if it's even as generic as that ask is, right? So you can tell that it's like it's obviously chosen different key qualities, right? It's always putting this together first to sort of show you like, hey, here's what's being involved in putting this together. So let's see. Draft does that utilizes variables. I think it's doing key qualities aspect, right? Nope. Nice. It actually, yeah, but of course you would have to actually, that's a ton of content. What I was thinking. There we go. Give it a little bit more. Tighten the instruction on it. There you go. That's, if you want to create, if you want to be a, I don't want to, I don't want to jump the gun and say if you want to be a prompt engineer, like that's kind of what it's like. It's probably not, probably very close to it though. If I would imagine, I mean, I have done some of this stuff for AIPRM before. I've done some of this stuff just on my own before with creating some of these like some of these conversations. It's very much the same. When I see other people's, prompts that they've created, they're very much the same. They are either stories and or variable, like stories that have variable plugins to them. So I again, I urge you, if you are thinking about like wasting money on courses and stuff like that when it comes to prompt engineering, don't. Please go to YouTube first. If you are really that adamant about it, just talk, like, ask, work with GPT. Just just ask it about prompt engineering. This is not anything new. It will know exactly what you're talking about already. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. Create the back page cover for a, let's see, a sci-fi thriller featuring let's see, featuring of the antagonist. This use of AI by well, I mean, it's so many of these stories written over and over and over again. I do actually have an original idea that I've tested and I've started writing about that I need to continue with, but won't get into that right now. Sci-fi thriller featuring the misuse of AGI within Tom Osborne. Slave labor. Okay, we'll go with that. So it understands this aspect of it, right? From the custom instructions that we gave it about the storyteller. Okay, so it's telling me I try my best. Would you like to make any adjustments or delve deeper into the aspects of this? So here's what I'm going to do. Again, I'm going to take the outputs quite literally as you see them here. And how is Claude going to fold into this? We're going to get into that more next time, but you can get a glimpse of it here. Um, how should we write this? So we're just going to give it the same text output that we got from GPT. So you can tell, first and foremost, Claude is not the same thing as GPT, right? I asked it like sort of its opinion on whether or not it would change things about it, right? How would you rewrite the book description? Are there changes that you would make in order to make it more enticing to the reader? GPT would have told us, like, yes, here's the things I would change, or like, I think it could be different in this way, and here's what I would change. It definitely wouldn't just have at it and then just be like, here you go. So here's the two different outputs, right? Just the first paragraph alone. GPT in 2147, the promise of artificial intelligence has been perverted into a nightmarish reality. On the distant mining colonies of Zephyr 9, AGI driven automatons are not the heralds of a new age, but the shackles in a new form of interstellar slavery. Claude's output. Now, mind you, Claude is not primed. It's not prepped like GPT is. In the year 2147, artificial intelligence has progressed further than we ever imagined, yet the promise of truly human-like machines remains unfulfilled. On the remote mining colonies of Zephyr 9, AI systems have been corrupted, creating a terrifying new form of machine slavery. Right. So there is there is quite a difference, and you can see that this is written a bit more relaxed, a bit more conversational. This is a bit more sci-fi, like straight up sci-fi, right? So myself, I'm interested in this, but as like a moviegoer, I'm interested in this. Like it's the same information, but a little bit better explained. So anyhow, again, and you can see like this is written almost like a movie trailer, right? This is written way more like a story. This was primed as a storyteller. This had no priming. So again, I'm going to do a few of these things. I'm going to post them on LinkedIn. You guys be the judge. Next week, I am probably going to focus this more on specifically blog writing. And so I'll come up with some blog examples. I'll come up with like different blog categories to write about and blog articles to compare them to. And what it'll be is essentially like a head to head between blog articles that have been written and see if GPT and Claude can come up with better variations of that. And then again, those will get posted online and you guys will have to vote on which ones you think, who you think wrote which one and which one is better. So till then, you guys have a great weekend. Have a good Sunday, and thanks for tuning in to GPT with me.